You'll be bankrupt in a month without me, Bridgette. Cameron Gideon, my CEO boyfriend, said it with such certainty, like he was forecasting quarterly earnings. I looked at him across the marble island of his penthouse, set down my coffee, and said just 2 words, let's see. Within 2 weeks, his board was in emergency session, his investors were pulling out, and his assistant was begging me to come back. Funny how the woman he called just arm candy had been holding his entire empire together. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm standing in Cameron's kitchen at 6 in the morning, the kind of kitchen that costs more than most people's houses. Everything is Italian marble and German appliances, sleek and cold and designed to impress people at dinner parties, not to actually cook in. Cameron's pouring himself espresso from a machine that cost $12,000, wearing a Tom Ford suit that I picked up from the dry cleaners yesterday, and he's telling me I'm nothing without him. You realize you have no marketable skills, right? He doesn't even look at me when he says it. He's scrolling through his phone, checking pre-market trading numbers. You've been playing house for 3 years while I built a tech empire. What exactly do you think you bring to the table? I'd been his girlfriend for 3 years, living in his penthouse in downtown Seattle, attending his corporate events, managing his household, and apparently, according to him, contributing absolutely nothing of value. The thing is, I'd heard different versions of this speech before. Little comments at dinners with his executive team. Jokes at charity galas about how I was decorative but not functional. His business partner Bryce making cracks about trophy girlfriends while Cameron laughed. But this morning was different. This morning, I'd woken up at 4 a.m. and checked something I'd been monitoring for 6 months. My personal investment portfolio had just crossed $8 million. $8 million that Cameron didn't know existed because he'd never bothered to ask what I did all day while he was at the office. I'm serious, Bridgette. He finally looks up, and I see something in his eyes I've seen before when he's negotiating with suppliers he plans to destroy. I'm bringing Leslie Banks to the shareholders meeting next week. She's a VP at Microsoft. Stanford MBA. Actually impressive. You should probably start looking for your own place. Leslie Banks. I knew exactly who she was. I'd been copied on enough emails, seen enough late-night texts preview on his phone. Cameron thought he was subtle, but he had the emotional intelligence of a parking meter. So this is it? I ask, keeping my voice level. 3 years, and you're upgrading to a newer model? Don't be dramatic. He's already putting on his Patek Philippe watch, the one I bought him for his birthday last year with money from my cute little side project, as he called it. You'll be fine. I'll give you 60 days to find a place. That's generous. Here's what Cameron didn't know. I'd been trading cryptocurrency and tech stocks since the day we met. That cute little side project, he dismissed. I'd turned his initial condescending gift of $10,000, so you have something to keep you busy, into $8 million through careful analysis of market patterns he was too arrogant to see. I walked to the counter, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app. Showed him the screen. Cameron, I want you to see something. He glanced at it, then did a double take. What is this? My portfolio. $8.2 million as of this morning. Built it in 3 years from the $10,000 you gave me to play with. I watched his face go from confused to shocked to something approaching respect before sliding into rage. So when you say I have no marketable skills, I'm curious what you mean. Because apparently, I'm better at reading markets than your entire research team. His face turned that specific shade of red that usually preceded him firing someone. You've been hiding money from me? It's not hiding when it was never yours. I went to the bedroom, pulled out the suitcase I'd already packed last night. I'm not stupid. I'd seen this coming for months. I'm leaving today, actually. 60 days is generous, but I won't need them. Bridgette, wait, his tone shifted immediately, that negotiator's voice he used when a deal was slipping away. Let's talk about this. I was harsh. I'm under a lot of stress with the IPO coming up. The IPO that I've been ghostwriting your presentations for? I zipped the suitcase closed. The investor materials I've been editing at 2 in the morning? The financial models I've been fact-checking because your analysts keep making errors? I watched him process this, his brain doing that thing where he recalculates value. You've been helping with the IPO materials? Cameron, I've been doing half your job for 2 years. The difference is you get paid $40 million a year, and I get told I'm arm candy. I headed for the door. Good luck with Leslie. I hope she's better at PowerPoint than you are. I took an Uber to the Four Seasons, checked in under my maiden name, Bridgette Heathers, and ordered the most expensive room service breakfast they had. Eggs Benedict, fresh pastries, a fruit plate that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget used to be. I was eating strawberries when my phone started blowing up. First call, Cameron. Ignored. Second call, his assistant, Jessica. Ignored. Third through 7th calls, Cameron again. All ignored. Then a text from Jessica, Bridgette, please. The presentation for the Goldman meeting is missing slides. Cameron can't find the backup files. He's losing it. I smiled and took another bite of strawberry. Those backup files were on my laptop. The one I'd taken with me. The one that had 3 years of work that Cameron thought his team had done. Another text, this time from Bryce Michael's son, Cameron's business partner. Whatever he said, he didn't mean it. We need you back. The Wells Fargo pitch is tomorrow and nobody knows where anything is. I turned my phone on, Do Not Disturb, and opened my laptop instead. Time to see what I could really build when I wasn't building someone else's empire. By noon, Cameron had called 37 times. By evening, I heard through a mutual friend that he'd canceled the Goldman meeting. By midnight, I'd started my own consulting firm, Heather's Strategic Advisory. Turns out, I didn't need him at all. But he was about to discover just how much he'd needed me. The Four Seasons suite had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, watching the sun rise over the water while Cameron's 38th call buzzed itself to voicemail. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. I was too busy looking at something I'd built in secret for 3 years. That $10,000 he'd given me? I'd turned it into $8 million through crypto and tech stocks he'd called nerd gambling. When the market crashed in 2022, Cameron had laughed at news reports of crypto investors losing everything. Good thing you're not stupid enough to be into that, he'd said. I'd smiled and nodded while quietly buying the dip. By 2023, my $5,000 in Bitcoin had become $300,000. I diversified into tech stocks, companies Cameron's firm had passed on. Nvidia before the AI boom. AMD when it was undervalued. Small semiconductor companies that I knew would explode once everyone caught up to what was coming. But here's the thing Cameron never understood, I wasn't just trading. I was analyzing his company's data. Every dinner party, every golf outing, every casual conversation with his executives, I was listening. When his VP of engineering, Paolo, mentioned they were struggling with server costs, I'd invested in cloud computing companies. When his CFO, Harry Smith, complained about supply chain issues, I'd shorted the logistics companies they were using and bought their competitors. I'd been watching the ripples his decisions made in the market and positioning myself ahead of the waves. 3 years of spreadsheets filled my screen. Every trade, every transaction, every calculated risk. I'd kept meticulous records because I knew someday I'd need to prove this was mine. That I'd built this myself. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Avery, Cameron's head of operations. Bridgette, I don't know what happened between you and Cameron, but we're drowning here. The JP Morgan presentation is in 3 days. We can't find half the files. Please. I almost felt bad for Avery. She was decent, worked 80-hour weeks, actually earned her salary. But she'd also sat at enough dinners where Cameron had made jokes about my intelligence and never said a word. Instead, I opened my email and started drafting something else. A business plan for Heather's Strategic Advisory. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Services, financial analysis, market research, strategic planning, investor relations. All the things I'd been doing for Cameron's company, except now I'd be charging what I was actually worth. My first potential client? Every competitor Cameron had made an enemy of in the past 3 years. And there were a lot of them. I pulled up a list I'd been keeping. Saul Birch at Tech Venture Capital. Josh Michael's son, Bryce's cousin, who ran a competing startup Cameron had tried to crush last year. And ironically, Leslie Banks at Microsoft, who I'd actually met at a conference and who'd seemed genuinely impressive. What Cameron didn't know, Leslie and I had stayed in touch. When he'd started pursuing her for his upgrade, she'd texted me immediately, "Your boyfriend just tried to recruit me. Want to know what he said about you?" I'd told her I already knew. But I'd also told her something else. "When I leave him, and I will, let's talk. I have information that might interest you." By day 2 at the Four Seasons, I'd done 3 things. First, I'd incorporated Heather's strategic advisory in Delaware. Clean, professional, legitimate. Second, I'd opened a business account and transferred $2 million from my personal portfolio. Startup capital that would make most entrepreneurs weep with envy. Third, I'd sent exactly 6 emails to 6 people who had reasons to hate Cameron Gideon. The first response came from Saul Birch within an hour. "I heard you left Cameron. I'd love to buy you coffee." The second from Josh, "Whatever you're planning, I'm interested." By the end of day 2, I had 4 coffee meetings scheduled and 2 formal consulting proposals requested. Companies that wanted inside information on how Cameron Gideon operated, what his strategies were, where his weaknesses lived. I wasn't going to give them insider information, that would be illegal, and unlike Cameron, I wasn't interested in prison. But I could give them something better: analytical frameworks, market insights, strategic thinking that had been making Cameron look like a genius for 3 years. The thing about being underestimated is that people tell you everything. They have sensitive conversations in front of you because they think you're not paying attention. They leave documents out because they assume you can't read them. They discuss strategy at dinner parties because you're just the girlfriend. For 3 years, I'd been a fly on the wall of a tech empire. I'd absorbed everything: how deals were structured, which investors were secretly backing out, which acquisitions were about to fail, which executives were job hunting, which products were going to flop. Cameron thought I'd been playing house. I'd been going to graduate school in his living room, getting a PhD in how to destroy him. My phone buzzed one more time. Cameron's voice was shaking. "Bridgette, the board is asking questions. They want to know why Goldman pulled out. They're asking about the IPO materials. Please, can we just talk? I'll apologize. I was wrong. Just call me back." I deleted the voicemail without listening to the end. Then I opened my calendar and confirmed my coffee meeting with Saul Birch for tomorrow morning. Time to start building my empire. Saul Birch looked exactly like his LinkedIn photo: silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of expensive casual wear that screamed, "I'm worth 9 figures but I'm approachable." We met at a cafe in Pioneer Square, far enough from Cameron's usual haunts that we wouldn't run into anyone from his world. "Bridgette Heathers." He shook my hand with genuine warmth. "I've heard a lot about you. Nothing good, I'm sure." I ordered a cappuccino, watching his reaction. On the contrary. Saul leaned back, studying me. "Paolo from Cameron's engineering team? He's my nephew. He's been telling me for 2 years that you're the smartest person in that penthouse, and it isn't close." That surprised me. Paolo had always been kind, but quiet. I didn't realize he'd noticed. Good to know I had an ally I didn't know about. "Paolo talks too much," I said carefully. "Paolo tells the truth." Saul pulled out a tablet. "Let me be direct. Cameron Gideon screwed me on a deal 3 years ago. Cost my fund $40 million. I've been waiting for an opportunity to return the favor. I hear you might be able to help with that." I sipped my coffee, buying time. "I'm not interested in revenge, Saul. I'm interested in building something legitimate. Good. So am I. He slid the tablet across the table. What if I told you I have 6 companies in my portfolio that need exactly what you were doing for Cameron? Strategic analysis, investor relations, market positioning. And what if I told you I'd pay you 3 times what Cameron should have been paying you? The number on the screen made my breath catch. $750,000. For 6 months of consulting work. That's generous, I managed. That's competitive. He smiled. Start Monday? I left the meeting with Saul's contract already signed and forwarded to my new business email. But something he'd said kept nagging at me. You're the 4th person to leave Cameron's inner circle in the past 6 months. 4th person? Back at the hotel, I did what I do best, research. LinkedIn searches, old news articles, industry gossip sites. It took me 3 hours, but I found them. Rachel Morrison, executive assistant, left March 2024. Now working at Amazon. Dr. Marcus Webb, chief technology officer, left October 2023. Started his own company. And the one that made my blood run cold, Jennifer Gideon. Cameron's ex-wife. Divorced 2022. I'd known Cameron was divorced. He'd mentioned it once, casually, saying it was amicable and mutual. But I'd never actually looked into it. Never thought to question his narrative. I found Jennifer's LinkedIn. She was a data scientist, Stanford PhD, currently working as an independent consultant. Her profile was sparse, professional, careful. But there was a blog post from 6 months ago. Title, On Leaving Toxic Partnerships, a Professional Reflection. It wasn't explicitly about Cameron. But it didn't have to be. When your contributions are consistently minimized, when your expertise is dismissed as lucky guesses, when you're told you should be grateful for opportunities you created yourself, that's not partnership. That's exploitation. I needed to talk to her. Finding Jennifer's email took some creative searching, but I managed it through a mutual connection in the tech industry. I sent a message at 11 p.m., not expecting a response until morning. She replied in 10 minutes. I was wondering when you'd reach out. Coffee tomorrow? I have a lot to tell you. We met at a cafe in Bellevue the next morning. Jennifer was stunning, tall, with natural hair and the kind of presence that made you understand why Cameron had married her. She was also nothing like the crazy ex-wife Cameron had vaguely alluded to. Let me guess, she said before I'd even sat down. He told you that you had no marketable skills. That you were lucky to be with him. That without his money and connections, you'd be nothing. I felt my chest tighten. Word for word. That's what he does. Jennifer pulled out a folder. An actual physical folder, stuffed with papers. This is everything I documented during our marriage and divorce. Want to know what I found? She spread papers across the table. Bank statements, transaction records, emails between Cameron and his business partners. The company's first major product. I designed the algorithm. Cameron took credit. The series of funding. I made the investor connections through my PhD advisor. Cameron told everyone it was his network. The acquisition strategy that made them $50 million? My analysis. Cameron presented it as his idea. I stared at the documents, seeing my own experience reflected back at me. He erased you. Systematically. Jennifer's voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. And when I started asking for recognition, for equity that reflected my contributions, he told me I was being difficult. Started telling people I was unstable. By the time I filed for divorce, half our mutual friends thought I was having a breakdown. What changed? I asked. I found Rachel. His assistant before the current one. Turns out, Cameron has a pattern. He finds talented women, uses their work, takes credit, then discards them when they start demanding recognition. Rachel connected me with Marcus, who'd had the same experience. We compared notes. Built a case. She pushed the folder toward me. The divorce settlement was sealed, but I kept copies of everything. And Bridgette? You're not the fourth person to leave his orbit. You're the seventh. We've all been keeping track. My hands shook as I picked up the folder. Why are you showing me this? Jennifer smiled, and it wasn't kind. It was calculating. Because you're the first one who left with leverage. You have access he doesn't know you have. Skills he doesn't think you possess. And most importantly, you left before the IPO. She leaned forward. Cameron Gideon is about to take his company public. The IPO is projected at $2 billion. But here's what he doesn't know. His entire operation is built on stolen work from 7 different people. And we've all been waiting for someone in the right position to expose it. She met my eyes directly. Want to help us burn it all down? I thought about that morning in his kitchen. The certainty in his voice when he told me I was nothing. The exit strategy he'd probably been planning for months. I looked at Jennifer, at the folder full of evidence, at the pattern of exploitation spanning years. Yes, I said. Let's destroy him. Jennifer's apartment in Bellevue was nothing like Cameron's sterile penthouse. It was warm, lived in, with bookshelves crammed full of technical manuals and framed photos of her with people who actually looked happy. We sat at her dining table, which was covered in laptops, documents, and empty coffee cups. This is Marcus. Jennifer gestured to her screen where a video call showed a man in his 40s with kind eyes and graying temples. He was Cameron's CTO for 3 years. And this is Rachel. Another window popped up, showing a woman about my age with sharp features and sharper eyes. She managed Cameron's life for 2 years before she got tired of being treated like furniture. Bridgette. Marcus nodded at me through the screen. Jennifer says you walked out 2 days ago. Brave move right before the IPO. More like survival instinct, I said. How long have you all been coordinating? About a year, Rachel answered. Jennifer found me first, then Marcus. We've been documenting everything since then. Every person Cameron has exploited, every idea he's stolen, every credit he's taken that wasn't his. Jennifer pulled up a spreadsheet. Names, dates, contributions, evidence. 7 people total, including me. Each one had brought something crucial to Cameron's company. Each one had been minimized, dismissed, and eventually discarded. The problem is, Jennifer continued, most of this is he said she said. Cameron is very good at covering his tracks. NDAs, sealed settlements, strategic memory loss. Without hard evidence, we're just bitter ex-employees. But you're different, Marcus added, looking at me. You're current. You have access to files, communications, documents that we don't. And you left before signing any separation agreements. I thought about my laptop. 3 years of emails, presentations, financial models. Cameron had given me access to everything because he never thought I was paying attention. I have backups, I said slowly. Everything I worked on. Every presentation I ghostwrote, every analysis I did, every investor pitch I edited. It's all timestamped with my metadata. Rachel leaned forward on her screen. Can you prove the work is yours? Every document has my editing history. Every email chain shows me doing the work. Cameron was too lazy to even change the file properties when he presented my work as his own. I pulled out my laptop. I have 3 years of evidence showing that at least 40% of what Cameron claims credit for was actually my work. The room went quiet. 40%? Jennifer's voice was careful. Probably closer to 60 if we're counting the stuff I did that he doesn't even remember I did. Jennifer made a call. 20 minutes later, we were on a video conference with a woman named Victoria Michelson. She was a partner at one of Seattle's top employment law firms, mid-40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper reputation. Let me be very clear about what you're describing, Victoria said after we'd laid everything out. This isn't just workplace grievance. If you can prove systematic theft of intellectual property across multiple employees over multiple years, you're talking about fraud. Securities fraud, potentially, if he's misrepresenting company capabilities to investors. The IPO, I said, pieces clicking together. He's going public in 6 weeks. All the investor materials claim the company's innovation and success are due to his leadership and vision. But they're actually due to stolen work from 7 different people, Victoria finished. Yes. That's securities fraud. The SEC would be very interested in that. Marcus spoke up. What about the people who signed NDAs? I'm bound by a non-disclosure agreement that's tighter than Fort Knox. NDAs don't protect illegal shit, Victoria said bluntly. If Cameron stole your work through fraud, those agreements don't mean anything. But we'd need to be strategic. Going to the SEC right now would freeze everything, including the IPO. That might not be what you want. What do you mean? I asked. Victoria smiled like a shark. You all have legitimate claims to equity in that company. If we can prove your contributions were essential to its value, you're entitled to compensation. But if we blow the whistle before the IPO, there might not be any value left to claim. So what do we do? Rachel asked. We build an airtight case. We document everything. We get corroborating witnesses. And then, right before the IPO roadshow begins, we file a lawsuit that's so damaging, so public, and so well documented that Cameron has 2 choices: settle with all of you for a significant portion of the company's value, or watch the IPO collapse entirely. We spent the next week building what Jennifer called the archive. Her apartment became our headquarters. Marcus flew in from San Francisco. Rachel took vacation days from Amazon. I checked out of the 4 Seasons and crashed on Jennifer's couch. Every day, we compiled evidence. I went through my laptop, pulling every file, every email, every document. Marcus provided technical specifications showing how his architecture was still the foundation of Cameron's platform. Rachel had calendars proving she'd coordinated meetings Cameron claimed he'd set up himself. But the real goldmine was something I found buried in my old emails. A message thread from 18 months ago between Cameron and his CFO, Harry Smith. The investors are asking too many technical questions, Cameron had written. I need Bridgette to prep me, but we can't let them know she's doing the analysis. Makes us look weak if they know my girlfriend is doing the CFO's job. Harry's response, agreed. Let's have her do the work, but I'll present it. Standard practice at this point. Standard practice. They'd been systematically using my work and hiding it. I found more. Dozens of emails where Cameron and his executives discussed how to use my analysis while ensuring I got no credit. How to manage my expectations about recognition. How to keep me happy with lifestyle benefits instead of actual equity or acknowledgement. This is it, Victoria said when I showed her. This is proof of intent. They knew what they were doing. They knew your work had value. They deliberately concealed your contributions. Jennifer was going through financial records. Look at this. The Series B funding round, the one that valued the company at $500 million? The investor deck cites proprietary market analysis as a key asset. Bridgette, didn't you do market analysis for that pitch? I pulled up my files. I did all of it. 3 months of work. 60-page report. Cameron presented it to investors as the company's internal research team's work. Except the company didn't have a research team then, Marcus added. It was just you, working unpaid, because you were the CEO's girlfriend. Rachel was building a timeline on the wall, red string connecting dots like a conspiracy theorist's dream. But this wasn't conspiracy. This was pattern. This was proof. We need one more thing, Victoria said, studying our evidence. We need someone currently inside the company to verify that this pattern is ongoing. Someone who can testify that Cameron is still taking credit for other people's work. I thought about Avery, Cameron's head of operations. The one who'd texted me begging for help. She was decent, hardworking, and I'd seen the way Cameron dismissed her ideas in meetings only to present them as his own later. I might know someone, I said. But I need to approach her carefully. Then we approach her right, Jennifer said. We show her she's not alone. That there's a pattern. That she has options. Victoria closed her laptop. IPO roadshow starts in 5 weeks. We file in 4. Give Cameron just enough time to panic, but not enough time to properly respond. I looked around the room at these 3 people who'd been through what I'd been through. Who'd been erased, dismissed, discarded. Who'd decided to fight back. He's going to regret underestimating us, I said. Jennifer's smile was ice cold. That's the whole point. Cameron's penthouse felt different when I walked back in with my key, the one he'd forgotten I still had. It was 3 a.m, exactly when I knew he'd be at the office. He'd been pulling all-nighters since the Goldman meeting fell through, trying to salvage the IPO timeline. The place was a mess. Takeout containers on the counter, his clothes thrown over furniture, mail piled up unopened. Without me, apparently, he'd reverted to living like a college student. I felt a small, petty satisfaction at that. But I wasn't here to judge his housekeeping. I was here for evidence. His home office was unlocked, of course it was. Cameron had always been careless about security. I pulled on latex gloves, no fingerprints, and got to work. His computer password was our anniversary. Pathetic and useful. His email was a gold mine. I plugged in the external hard drive Jennifer had given me and started copying everything. Every sent message, every draft, every folder. But I wasn't just copying blindly. I was searching for specific terms. Bridgette analysis, 47 results. Use her work, 32 results. Don't credit, 19 results. Each search revealed another thread, another conversation where Cameron and his team discussed how to exploit my work while keeping me in the dark. I photographed the most damning ones with my phone, making sure the timestamps were visible. In his desk drawer, under a stack of term sheets and cap tables, I found something that made my blood run cold. A prenuptial agreement. Blank, but prepared. Dated 3 weeks ago. So he had been planning to propose. Not out of love, but as a trap. Lock me in legally before the IPO, make sure I couldn't claim any equity, keep me as the decorative girlfriend but with a legally binding contract ensuring I'd get nothing if it ended. I photographed every page. The real treasure was Cameron's safe. It was behind a framed photo of him accepting some entrepreneur award. I'd walked past it 1,000 times, never thinking about what might be inside. The combination was probably something obvious. I tried his birthday. Nothing. Company founding date. Nothing. Then I remembered something he'd said once, drunk at a party. My lucky number is the day I became a millionaire. I pulled out my phone and searched. Cameron's first big exit was a company he'd sold for $12 million in 2019. The sale closed on August 7th. I tried 0807. The safe opened. Inside, passports, some cash, legal documents, and a thumb drive labeled insurance. I plugged the thumb drive into my laptop, my burner laptop that wasn't connected to any network. What I found made everything else look like small potatoes. Cameron had been keeping his own insurance files. Communications with investors where he'd lied about company metrics. Emails with his accountant discussing creative tax strategies that were definitely illegal. Messages with Bryce about burying an SEC inquiry from 2 years ago that I'd never heard about. And a document titled Exit Strategy, Bridgette. Dated 6 months ago. A step-by-step plan for removing me from his life while ensuring I couldn't claim any contribution to his success. The plan included tactics like emphasize lack of formal credentials in public discussions. Ensure no written record of contributions exists. Have witnesses ready to testify to instability if needed. Prepared narrative, gold digger who contributed nothing. He'd been planning this for half a year. While I'd been working on his IPO materials, he'd been planning my elimination. I sat in that Uber watching the city blur past, and for the first time in 3 years, I let myself feel it. Not sadness. Rage. Pure, Crystallized rage at wasting 3 years loving someone who'd been planning my systematic erasure like a hostile takeover. I copied everything from the thumb drive, put it back exactly where I'd found it, closed the safe, and left the apartment. By the time the sun was coming up over Seattle, I was back at Jennifer's. My phone buzzed. A text from Cameron, thinking about you. Can we talk today? I miss you. I stared at the message, thinking about that exit strategy document. He missed me because he was drowning without my work, not because he actually cared. I didn't respond. Instead, I texted Jennifer, we have everything. And I mean everything. He kept his own insurance files. He documented his own crimes. Her response came immediately, he what? He's been keeping evidence of everything illegal he's done. Financial fraud, SEC violations, tax evasion. It's all there. He was probably planning to use it as leverage against his partners if things went bad. 3 dots appeared, then, Bridgette, do you understand what this means? I watched the Seattle skyline pass by through the window. The city was waking up, people starting their days, having no idea that in 4 weeks, one of their tech darlings was going to implode. It means we don't just have a lawsuit, I typed back. We have a criminal case. We can destroy him completely. Jennifer's response was a single word, good. 3 days after copying Cameron's files, I did something that surprised everyone. I texted him back. Coffee tomorrow? We should talk. His response came in seconds, yes. Thank you. Name the place. Jennifer thought I was insane. You're going to see him? Why? Because right now he thinks I'm just a hurt girlfriend who walked out in anger. If I ghost him completely, he'll get suspicious. But if I meet with him, let him think he can manipulate me back, he'll relax. Victoria nodded slowly. She's right. The best way to gather more intelligence is to let him think he's winning. So I met Cameron at a cafe in Capitol Hill, dressed in one of the softer dresses he'd always liked. Hair down, minimal makeup, playing the part of the uncertain girlfriend who might be willing to come back. He looked terrible. Circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, tie loose. When he saw me, actual relief washed over his face. Bridgette. He stood, moved like he wanted to hug me, then stopped when I didn't move forward. Thank you for meeting me. Cameron. I was an asshole. That morning, what I said, I was stressed about the IPO and I took it out on you. It wasn't fair. No, it wasn't. I've been thinking about everything you did for me. For us. The presentations, the analysis, all of it. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. I took you for granted. I see that now. I let the silence stretch. What do you want, Cameron? I want you to come back. Not just to the apartment, to everything. I want you involved in the company officially. We could make you a consultant, get you equity, whatever you want. There it was. He was scared. The IPO was in 5 weeks and he was drowning. What kind of equity? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. 0.5%? That's worth $10 million at IPO valuation. 0.5%. For 3 years of work that had built 40% of his company's value. I'll think about it, I said, standing up. But Cameron? I'm not coming back to the apartment. If we work together, it's professional only. Of course. Whatever you need. The consulting agreement arrived 2 days later. 0.5% equity with a 4-year vesting schedule, meaning I'd have to stay through the IPO and beyond to see any of it. But I signed it anyway, with Victoria's approval. This actually helps us, she said. Now you have official standing. And the equity offer is evidence that they know your contributions have value. My first day back in Cameron's office building felt surreal. Jessica gave me a desk in the common area. Not an office, just a desk. Like an intern. But that desk gave me access to everything. The company Slack, the shared drives, the project management systems. And now I had a legal right to be there. I spent my first week doing actual work, updating investor presentations, fixing financial models. But I was also documenting everything. Every conversation where Cameron took credit for my work. Every meeting where he dismissed someone else's contribution. Avery stopped by my desk on day 3. "Glad you're back," she said quietly. "It's been chaos without you." "Thanks." I waited, sensing she wanted to say more. She glanced around, then leaned in. "Can we have coffee sometime? Off campus?" We met at a cafe in Fremont the next day. Avery looked exhausted. "I need to tell someone this," she said. "The supply chain optimization project that Cameron just presented to the board? The one he's saying will save $15 million a year?" "Yeah. I designed it. 6 months of work. I presented it to him in March. He told me it was interesting but not quite right. Then last week, he presented it to the board as his own idea. Word for word. My slides." I pulled out my phone. "Can you prove that?" She pulled out hers. "I have the original presentation with timestamps. Emails where I pitched it to him. Slack messages where I asked for feedback." "Avery, how long has this been happening?" "Since I started. 2 years. I thought about the 7 people Jennifer had identified. You're not the first person he's done this to." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I made a decision. There are others. People who used to work for Cameron who've experienced the same thing. We're building a case against him. I could lose my job. You could. Or you could get equity in a company you actually helped build." I slid Victoria's card across the table. "Think about it." "But Avery? You deserve credit for your work." 2 weeks into my consulting role, Cameron invited me to the executive team meeting. "I want you to present the Q3 projections," he said. I spent 3 days preparing. Building models, analyzing data, creating a presentation that was frankly brilliant. I also did something else. I enabled the meeting recording feature that Cameron's team usually forgot about. The board members arrived. Richard Gideon, no relation to Cameron. Sarah Birch, Saul's sister. Paolo Chen. Cameron started the meeting. "Before we get to the main agenda, I want to walk you through our Q3 projections. We've done extensive analysis and I think you'll be impressed." "Wait. What?" He pulled up his laptop. On the screen was my presentation. My data, my models, my analysis. With his name on every slide. "As you can see," he continued, "our growth trajectory suggests we'll hit profitability 2 quarters ahead of schedule." I sat there, frozen, watching him present my work word for word. Not a single mention of my name. When he finished, the board applauded. "Excellent work, Cameron," Richard said. "Thank you," Cameron said, looking proud. I spent quite a bit of time on this analysis. I caught Paolo's eye. He looked uncomfortable, but stayed silent. After the meeting, Cameron pulled me aside. "Great data, Bridgette. Really helped me put that together." "Helped you?" My voice was carefully neutral. "Well, you did the number crunching, but I framed it strategically. That's what leadership is about." I smiled back. "Of course. That makes sense." That night, I downloaded the meeting recording before anyone could delete it. Video evidence of Cameron presenting my work as his own, in front of the entire board, while I sat silently in the corner. I sent it to Victoria with a simple message: add it to the evidence pile. Her response: "We're ready. File next week?" I thought about Avery, who'd joined our case. About the pattern spanning years. About Cameron's exit strategy document. "Yes," I typed. "Let's burn it down." Victoria filed the lawsuit on a Monday morning at 9 a.m., exactly 4 weeks before Cameron's IPO roadshow was scheduled to begin. The complaint was 147 pages long. Jennifer, Marcus, Rachel, Avery, and I were listed as primary plaintiffs. 3 other former employees had joined as supporting witnesses. The claims included systematic theft of intellectual property, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, gender-based discrimination, and securities fraud. By 9:30, tech reporters had found it. By 10, it was trending on Twitter. I was sitting in Jennifer's apartment when my phone started exploding. The only message I cared about came at 10:07. "Cameron, what the fuck did you do?" I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the coverage roll in. The headlines were devastating. Gideon Tech CEO faces lawsuit alleging systematic IP theft ahead of $2 billion IPO. 5 former employees claim Tech CEO built empire on stolen work. Cameron Gideon, genius or fraud? Jennifer handed me wine even though it was 10 in the morning. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," I admitted. "And free." Marcus called in from San Francisco. "My phone is on fire." 3 reporters, 2 former colleagues, and someone from the SEC. "The SEC already?" Rachel looked shocked. "Securities fraud allegations against a company about to IPO? They'll investigate immediately," Victoria said. My phone rang again. "Cameron, 5th call in 10 minutes." I let it go to voicemail and listened. "Bridgette, this is insane. You're destroying everything. Everything we built together. Call me. Please. Everything we built." Even now, he couldn't admit it was everything I built that he'd stolen. By noon, Cameron's lawyers had filed a motion to seal the case. By 2 p.m., a judge had denied it. By 4 p.m., 3 of Cameron's board members had resigned. Paolo texted me updates. "It's chaos. Cameron is having a meltdown. Bryce is trying damage control. The lawyers are talking about postponing the IPO. Some board members want Cameron to step down immediately." That evening, Cameron's PR team released a statement. "Mr. Gideon is shocked and disappointed by these baseless allegations from former associates seeking to profit from his success. Gideon Tech was built through Mr. Gideon's vision and leadership. While various team members contributed to projects, as is normal in any organization, the characterization of their work as stolen is categorically false. Mr. Gideon looks forward to vigorously defending himself in court." Various team members, Jennifer read aloud. "Is that what we are now?" Rachel was scrolling through Twitter. People are pulling up old interviews where Cameron claimed he personally coded the original platform. "Marcus, didn't you code that?" "Every single line," Marcus confirmed. "I have the GitHub commits to prove it." "Send them to the reporters," Victoria instructed. Within 24 hours, former Gideon Tech employees started sharing their own stories on social media. Not part of the lawsuit, just people who'd worked there and watched Cameron take credit for their work. A former intern posted screenshots of a marketing campaign she designed that Cameron presented as his own. A contract developer shared code commits proving he'd built features Cameron claimed to have personally architected. #Gideon Truth started trending. It wasn't just about our lawsuit anymore, it was about every person who'd ever been erased, every contribution stolen, every voice silenced by someone with more power. I watched it unfold from Jennifer's couch, my wine glass empty, my heart racing. My phone rang. Unknown number. Bridgette Heathers? A woman's voice, professional. "Yes? My name is Detective Sarah Chen with Seattle PD, Economic Crimes Unit. I'm calling about your lawsuit against Cameron Gideon. We've received information suggesting he may have engaged in financial crimes beyond your civil complaint. Wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow." I looked at Jennifer, who was watching with raised eyebrows. "Yes. I can meet tomorrow." "Excellent. And Ms. Heathers? Bring any evidence you have regarding Mr. Gideon's financial activities." After I hung up, Jennifer's eyes went wide. "The police? Remember that thumb drive from his safe?" I pulled it up on my laptop. Time to share it with law enforcement. Victoria called an emergency meeting that night. The criminal investigation changes everything. If the police and FBI get involved, Cameron's not just facing a lawsuit. He's facing prison time. Good, Marcus said flatly. What about the IPO? Avery asked. There's no way it proceeds now. Victoria pulled up articles showing the underwriters getting nervous. I'd be shocked if they don't withdraw by end of week. I thought about Cameron's exit strategy document. His careful plan to erase me, to paint me as unstable, to ensure I got nothing. Rachel raised her glass. To Bridgette. For proving we weren't nothing without him. He was nothing without us. We all drank to that. My phone buzzed. Cameron again, please. I'm begging you. Let's meet. Just us. I'll give you whatever you want. I typed back one sentence. You said I wouldn't survive without you. How are you doing? I hit send and turned off my phone. The FBI showed up at Cameron's office Thursday morning. Paolo sent me updates. 3 agents just walked in. They're asking for Cameron and all financial records. They're confiscating computers. Everyone's being told to step away. Bryce just got escorted out in handcuffs. Holy shit. I called Victoria immediately. Did you know they were arresting people? No. But this validates everything we've been saying. She paused. Turn on CNBC. There was aerial footage of Cameron's building, police cars and black SUVs outside. The Chiron read, FBI raids Gideon Tech, co-founder arrested. Jennifer sat beside me, both of us staring at the screen. This is really happening, she whispered. My phone rang. Agent Sarah Chen from the FBI. Miss Heathers, we need you at our field office today. We have questions about evidence you may possess. The thumb drive. Among other things. Can you be here in 2 hours? I looked at Jennifer, who was nodding. Yes. The FBI field office was exactly what you'd expect, sterile, intimidating, serious people in dark suits. Agent Chen met me with another agent named Rodriguez. They led me to an interview room with a table, 3 chairs, and a camera in the corner. You're not under investigation, Agent Chen said immediately. You're a witness. Everything you tell us is voluntary. I pulled out my laptop and the thumb drive. I found this in Cameron's personal safe. It contains files he labeled insurance, communications with investors containing false information, discussions of illegal tax strategies, evidence of an SEC inquiry from 2022 that was buried. Agent Rodriguez took the thumb drive carefully. How did you access Mr. Gideon's safe? I lived with him for 3 years. I knew the combination. When I left, I still had a key. I went back to collect belongings and found the safe. Close enough to the truth. Agent Chen scrolled through my laptop. These emails between Mr. Gideon and his investors, he's claiming $30 million in annual recurring revenue. Is that accurate? No. The actual ARR is about $19 million. I know because I built the financial models. Cameron inflated the numbers. Can you prove that? I opened another folder. Here are the actual financial statements. Here are the investor presentations with inflated numbers. Here are emails where Cameron and his CFO discussed adjusting revenue figures for fundraising. Both agents exchanged glances. Miss Heathers, Agent Chen said slowly, how much evidence do you have? 3 external hard drives worth. 5 years of emails, financial records, presentations, meeting recordings. Agent Rodriguez leaned back. You've been documenting this for how long? I didn't realize I was documenting crimes until recently. I was just keeping records of my work. Backing up files. It wasn't until I left that I understood what I was looking at. By Friday morning, the story had exploded. Cameron wasn't just facing a lawsuit, he was essentially a fugitive. The FBI said he wasn't technically fleeing, but the optics were terrible. Every news outlet had reporters camped outside his apartment, his office, his parents' house. His photo was everywhere with increasingly unflattering headlines. I was in Victoria's office when we got news that the IPO was officially dead. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley had withdrawn. The company's private valuation had dropped to $300 million, barely 15% of what it had been 2 weeks ago. Cameron's 42% stake is now worth about $126 million, Marcus calculated. Down from over $800 million. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, Rachel muttered. Agent Shin called later. We've located Mr. Gideon at his family's cabin on the San Juan Islands. He's agreed to come in for questioning Monday morning. His lawyer negotiated terms. He'll voluntarily surrender and cooperate in exchange for not being arrested immediately. Is that it? I asked. Is it over? The investigation is just beginning. But the immediate crisis is contained. Whatever happens next, you did the right thing. That weekend, I moved into my own apartment. Nothing fancy, a one-bedroom in Capitol Hill with hardwood floors and a view of the Space Needle. I didn't want big. I wanted mine. Sunday night, my mom called from Ohio. She'd seen the news. Baby, are you okay? The news is saying he might go to prison. I'm okay, Mom. Better than okay, actually. You brought down a billionaire. I looked around my small, empty apartment. My laptop on the floor, still loaded with evidence. My phone full of messages from reporters and other victims asking for advice. I didn't bring him down, Mom. He brought himself down. I just stopped holding him up. On Monday, Cameron walked into the FBI office with his lawyer. The photos were everywhere by noon, him in a wrinkled suit, unshaven, looking 10 years older. He gave a statement. Mr. Gideon maintains his innocence and looks forward to clearing his name. He built Gideon Tech from nothing through hard work and innovation. I watched from my apartment, drinking coffee, and couldn't help but laugh. Even standing at the edge of ruin, he still couldn't admit the truth. My deposition was brutal. 6 hours of questioning by Cameron's lawyers trying to discredit every claim we'd made. The conference room at Victoria's firm overlooked Puget Sound. Cameron's lawyers, 3 of them from a San Francisco firm, sat across from Victoria and me. A court reporter positioned at the head of the table. Cameron's lead attorney was Patricia Moore, 60-something with steel-gray hair and aggressive confidence. Miss Heathers, she began with condescension, you lived with Mr. Gideon for 3 years. During that time, he provided housing worth approximately $3 million, correct? He owned the apartment. I lived there. He paid for your lifestyle? Some of it. I had my own money. Patricia smiled like a shark. Ah, yes, your trading portfolio. Isn't it true the initial capital came from Mr. Gideon? $10,000 he gave you? Yes. Which I turned into $8 million through my own skill. Or perhaps through insider information from living with a tech CEO? Victoria objected. Not relevant and you know it, Patricia. But I answered anyway. I never traded Gideon Tech stock or any company Cameron directly partnered with. Everything was legal, based on publicly available information. But you did listen to his business conversations? Had access to confidential information? I had access to the work I did for him. The presentations I wrote, the analyses I conducted. That's what this case is about. Patricia pulled out a document. This presentation titled Q3 Financial Projections. You claim you created this? I did. But it has Mr. Gideon's name on every slide. Because he put his name on my work. That's the problem. Or perhaps you assisted with a project he was leading, and now you're exaggerating your contributions to extract money? I felt anger rise, but Victoria's hand on my arm kept me calm. The metadata shows I created them. The emails show me doing the work. The meeting recordings show Cameron presenting my work as his without credit. This isn't exaggeration. It's documentation. Victoria gave me the highlights of Cameron's deposition that evening. He fell apart, she said with satisfaction. When we started playing the meeting recording where he presented your Q3 analysis as his work, you could see his face change. His own lawyer looked sick. She pulled up the transcript. Cameron had tried to claim he provided strategic guidance for everything, but couldn't point to a single documented instance of actually directing my work. By the end, even his lawyers knew they had no case. The preliminary hearing for the criminal case came 6 weeks later. The prosecution wasn't ready for full trial, but they needed to convince a judge that charges were warranted. I sat in the gallery with Jennifer, Marcus, Rachel, and Avery. Cameron sat at the defense table looking diminished, weight loss, expensive suit hanging loose, eyes darting nervously. Agent Shin testified first, walking through the evidence methodically. The thumb drive from Cameron's safe. Communications with investors containing false information. Tax documents showing unreported income. Emails discussing how to hide assets. In total, Agent Shin testified, we've identified 17 instances of securities fraud, 23 counts of wire fraud, and 8 counts of tax evasion. Cameron's lawyer argued the evidence was circumstantial, that there were innocent explanations. Judge Wilson, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, wasn't buying it. "Counselor," she said, cutting him off, "your client kept a thumb drive labeled insurance containing evidence of his own crimes. That's not circumstantial. That's confession." The hearing lasted 3 hours. Judge Wilson ruled there was sufficient probable cause. "Mr. Gideon," she said, looking directly at him, "you are charged with 17 counts of securities fraud, 23 counts of wire fraud, and 8 counts of tax evasion. Bail is set at $5 million. Cameron's face went white. Cameron's criminal trial lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the thumb drive, the emails, Bryce's testimony, financial records, testimony from all of us. Cameron's defense was, "I'm a businessman, not a criminal." These were judgment calls. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on 14 counts of securities fraud. Guilty on 19 counts of wire fraud. Guilty on 6 counts of tax evasion. I watched the verdict on the news from my new office. I'd rented space in Pioneer Square for what was now the Heathers Foundation. Cameron's face showed no emotion as the verdicts were read. His mother sobbed. His father sat stone-faced. His lawyers announced they'd appeal. Sentencing came 2 months later. "Mr. Gideon," Judge Wilson said, "you systematically exploited talented individuals, stole their work, and built an empire on fraud. You showed no remorse. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised release. You will pay $32 million in restitution and $15 million in fines." 12 years. Cameron would be 51 when he got out. The settlement offer for our civil case came shortly after. Cameron's lawyers started at $45 million with an NDA. We rejected it. They came back with $65 million, no NDA, but Cameron would admit no wrongdoing. "Take it," Victoria advised. $65 million is fair compensation. Use it to build something better. We settled for $67 million. Based on documented contributions, Jennifer $18 million, me $16 million, Marcus $15 million, Rachel $12 million, Avery $6 million. When that wire transfer hit my account, $16 million plus my trading portfolio meant $24 million total. I stared at the number for a full minute. Cameron had been right about one thing: I wouldn't have survived without him. I would have thrived much sooner. The Heathers Foundation officially launched 6 months after the settlement. Jennifer was executive director. Marcus ran technical advisory. Rachel managed operations. Avery headed legal support. I served as founder and chief strategist. Our mission: help people document and fight back against workplace exploitation, stolen intellectual property, and systematic erasure of contributions. We offered free legal consultations, connected victims with attorneys, provided resources for documenting evidence, and maintained a database of companies with patterns of this behavior. Within the first month, we received over 3,000 requests for help. Tech workers, academics, creative professionals, all with stories similar to ours. Work stolen, credit taken, contributions erased. We couldn't help everyone, but we helped who we could. 12 major cases in our first year. 110. The other 2 settled favorably. I was in our conference room one afternoon when our receptionist buzzed. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's important." The woman who walked in was young, maybe 25, with dark circles and a folder clutched to her chest. "Ms. Heathers? My name is Emma. I work for a startup in San Francisco. My CEO has been taking credit for my work for 2 years. I saw your story and thought maybe you could help." I gestured to a chair. "Tell me everything." As she talked, laying out a familiar pattern, I thought about Cameron's voice that morning in his kitchen. "You have no marketable skills. You'd be nothing without me." He'd been so certain. Turned out, I had plenty of skills. I just hadn't been using them to build his empire anymore. I was building my own. 3 months later, Emma won her case. 6 months after that, her former CEO settled with 3 other employees who'd come forward. The patterns kept revealing themselves. The more cases we took, the more victims found us. And slowly, the industry started paying attention. Companies began implementing better attribution systems. Investors started asking harder questions. Employees felt more empowered to speak up. It wasn't a revolution. But it was a start. On the 1-year anniversary of walking out of Cameron's penthouse, I stood in our office looking at the wall where we'd posted photos of every person we'd helped. 53 people in 1 year. 53 people who'd gotten their credit back, their compensation, their dignity. My phone buzzed. "Jennifer, board meeting in 10. And you have a call with Forbes after. They want you for their 30 under 30 social impact list." I smiled. Cameron used to joke that I'd never accomplish anything worth media attention. Turned out, bringing down a fraudulent CEO and starting a foundation to help victims was exactly what Forbes cared about. I grabbed my coffee and headed to the conference room, passing the framed quote by the door. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. Cameron thought getting rid of me would solve his problems. Instead, it planted something that grew into his destruction and bloomed into dozens of other people's liberation. I was in a coffee shop when I thought I saw him. 3 years since sentencing, Cameron still had 9 years left. But someone walked past the window with similar hair, similar build, wearing a suit like his. My heart jumped. That old fear response. It wasn't him. Just a stranger. I went back to my laptop, reviewing a case file for a woman in Boston whose VC firm had systematically stolen pitch decks from female founders. Victoria called. Cameron's attorneys filed for early release. He's been a model prisoner, apparently. My chest tightened. Will it work? No. Judge Wilson already denied it. He'll serve at least 8 more years minimum. After I hung up, I sat thinking about the man who'd told me I was nothing. Who'd built an empire on stolen work. Who was sitting in prison, probably still believing he'd done nothing wrong. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just distant relief that some things had consequences. My assistant interrupted. Your 3 o'clock is here. The documentary crew? Right. Netflix was doing a documentary about workplace exploitation in tech. They wanted to interview me. The interviewer, Sarah, smiled warmly. Let's start at the beginning. When did you first realize Cameron was taking credit for your work? I thought about that morning in his kitchen. The certainty in his voice. The dismissiveness. I think part of me always knew, I said. But knowing something and being ready to act are different. For 3 years, I accepted it because I didn't believe I could survive without him. The day I left was the day I realized the truth. Which was that I wasn't surviving with him. I was just existing. And existing isn't enough when you're capable of so much more. What would you say to someone in a similar situation right now? I looked directly at the camera, thinking about all the future victims out there. Document everything. Save every email, every file, every piece of evidence. Build your exit strategy carefully and legally. Find your allies, there are more than you think. And remember, the person taking credit for your work needs you far more than you need them. You have the skills, the talent, the value. They just have the title. And when you're ready to leave? I smiled, remembering those keys on Cameron's counter. Walk away and don't look back. The empire you build for yourself will always be worth more than the one you built for someone else. The interview wrapped. As the crew packed up, Sarah approached privately. Off the record, my sister is in a situation like yours. Different industry, same pattern. Could she reach out? I handed her my card. Have her call tomorrow. We'll help. That evening, I went home to my townhouse in Capitol Hill. Not the penthouse Cameron had used to impress people. But it had a garden where I grew tomatoes, an office where I worked on cases, and a front door that was entirely mine. I poured wine and opened my laptop. An email from Forbes, your profile for 40 under 40, leaders reshaping business will run next month. I thought about showing Cameron, then realized I didn't care what he thought anymore. His opinion had turned out to be completely worthless. The woman he'd called nothing had built something that actually mattered. Had helped hundreds of people reclaim their value. Had created a foundation that would outlast both of us. My phone buzzed. Jennifer, emergency case just came in. Tech CEO in Austin, pattern matches Cameron's almost exactly. 10 victims ready to come forward. Available tomorrow? I typed back, absolutely. Send me the files. Cameron had asked me once what I brought to the table. Turned out, I brought the hammer that would shatter every table built on lies. And I was far from done swinging it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.